Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us. We are the American School Health Association, and we're pleased to welcome you to our monthly webinar series. Just a little bit about the American School Health Association. First, my name is Jeannie Alter, and I'm the Executive Director of the American School Health Association. Our mission is to transform all schools into places where every student learns and thrives. And we envision healthy students who learn and achieve in safe and healthy environments, nurtured by caring adults, functioning within a coordinated school and community support system. Just a little bit about the benefits of membership in ASHA. First, we have, and we're very proud of our Journal of School Health, which is our peer-reviewed journal. That is available in print and online to our members. We also get access to a wealth of information and expertise, whether that be through our national conference, which is coming up this October, our biweekly newsletter, and our networking communities. We also offer continuing education free to our members. We have a career center, which offers members discount rates for job postings in our career center. And most recently, we've added a section that allows you to post and look for internships free of charge. We also have a special agreement with the American Academy of Pediatrics, and they are offering all of our members a 15% discount on publications. I want to let you know that we are going to be celebrating our 93rd annual School Health Conference in Cincinnati, October 2nd through the 4th. So we hope that you'll save that date and you'll join us. It should be a great time. And you want to try the Cincinnati chili. So for sure, make sure you mark that down. So it's my pleasure today to introduce Angie Proctor, who is today's presenter. And Angie lives in Quinlan, Texas, where she is a wife of 23 years to Richard and a mom to 2 teenagers, Henry and Will. Angie has a master's degree in marriage and family therapy, and she is currently teaching as an adjunct instructor and completing her PhD in educational psychology at Texas A&M University in Commerce, Texas. Angie's research interests focus on trauma and the educational needs of harmed children, as well as how to implement trauma-informed practices in the classroom, which is very important for our work and why we've asked her to come here today. Angie has worked with at-risk children and teens since 2001. She devoted 9 years to a residential group home for children where she served as the therapeutic services director as well as residential care director and child care administrator. Most of the children served had experienced deep trauma as well as attachment and developmental issues. Since 2008, Angie has studied and trained under Dr. Karen Purvis and Dr. David Cross at the Karen Purvis Institute of Child Development at Texas Christian University. She is a TBRI practitioner and also serves as a TBRI mentor who helps the KPICD train professionals several times a year. Angie is the founder and executive director of Trust-Based Counseling Services. TBCS provides various services, including in-home intensive interventions for children and families, parent coaching, trauma-informed parenting classes, trauma-informed training for schools, as well as professional trainings. Angie has devoted her life and education to helping children who come from traumatic backgrounds, and we're very, very proud to have her today. And I'll turn it over to you, Angie. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Jeannie. I'm really excited to be here today. I'm happy to share the information that I know about trust-based relational intervention and how it can help us all to become more trauma-informed and to meet the complex needs of the children that we work with. So I will go ahead and move in, and please feel free to ask questions. And I think hopefully at the end, if we have some time, we can have some Q&A as well. So Caitlin, do I need to share, or do you have that taken care of already?
Nope, you can share your slides now.
Okay. All right. Let me put that in presenter mode. There we go. So let me just move forward to talk about Dr. Karen Purvis, who was the creator and one of the founders of the Institute of Child Development there at TCU. Dr. Purvis was actually a student of Dr. David Cross there at TCU. She was a mom. She went back to school later on in life. Both of her boys were older. In fact, I believe she decided to go back to school at TCU when, I can't remember if it was the older or the younger, but one of her boys was starting college, and she decided, I'm going to go back too. She had done some case management and worked a little bit for CPS, and they had also fostered some children. So she also had a heart for children that have been through some traumatic experiences in their lives. So, and she also herself has a trauma history. So she, out of going back to school and being connected with Dr. Cross, they ended up forming a lab where they helped adoptive children, well, parents who had adopted children, and it kind of started off with people who had adopted overseas. And they just came to them asking, we've adopted children and we really are struggling with some pretty challenging behaviors, and we're doing everything that we know to do. So could you please help us? What do we do? And they tell the story all the time. They said, you know what, we don't know, but we want to help you find out. And so they started with camps. They started the Hope Connection Camp and started collecting data, and found that the more they connected and built positive relationships with the children that they work with that came to their camp, the more positive results they saw. So then they sought out to find the research and the science to back that up, because Dr. Purvis would always say, what we're doing is not rocket science. It's stuff that your grandparents, your grandmother may have already known to do instinctively, but now we're trying to back that up with science. And so they have, I believe they opened the Institute in 2005. And unfortunately, Dr. Purvis passed with cancer spring of 2016. So there are many of us that knew her and worked with her. I was fortunate. Jeannie talked about how I worked with a children's home for 9.5 years. And during that time, that is when I met Dr. Purvis, and she actually came on our campus and worked one-on-one with a few cases where she helped to coordinate and place children there to work specifically with them so that we could use her model, the TBRI model, with those children. So I hold that experience and that learning time with her dear to my heart. And so there are many of us that are here that are charged with sharing her information and keeping her legacy alive. So yeah, this is just basic information about the Institute. And I kind of gave you a good synopsis of that. And I believe they'll be sharing this slideshow with you so you can have that after the presentation. Let's talk about complex trauma. Dr. Van der Kolk, if you're familiar with him, and many people, Stephen Porges, and many people have learned more and more about trauma over the years. And Howard Bath, who talks about, he came up with the pillars of trauma-informed care, have discussed how important it is to understand how trauma affects us in our lives. And the 3 pillars that Howard Bath came up with is felt safety, connection, and self-regulation. So felt safety we'll talk about here in a little bit later on down in the slideshow, but we don't always, even though we're actually in a safe environment, we as people, and I say everybody, all of us experience this from time to time, even though you're in a safe environment, you don't always feel safe. And so part of trauma-informed care is understanding that and knowing how to meet that need for the people that you're working with. Connection is the heart of the matter. If you don't have a relationship, it's harder. You're going to spend a little bit more time working on the needs of your clients than if you have a deep, positive, safe relationship with those people. So connection is very important. And then self-regulation, it's also very important for all of us, everybody in the human race, to understand how stress affects their bodies and how our bodies are designed to regulate themselves and to know what it takes to do that. And our children aren't taught that. I mean, I wasn't taught that as a child. And so when I work with families and go in the homes of children who have experienced horrific things in their lives, I love teaching them about their bodies and how their bodies respond to stress so that they don't think that there's something wrong with them, and explain to them that we all experience the same thing. When we go through things that are hard or scary or stressful, all of our bodies respond in the same way. And there's a way that we can help for our bodies to bounce back and heal themselves. So those are all very important pieces that Howard Bath has presented to us that Dr. Purvis felt very important and has included that as part of her model. And so we need to think about how trauma impacts all of us. Trauma impacts the way our brains think. We're going to talk about upstairs brain and downstairs brain, which is an idea that came from Dan Siegel. And when we experience traumatic things happening to us over and over again, parts of our brain, specific parts of our brains develop a little bit more than others. And, you know, as most of you probably know, it's really important for us to develop the part of our brain that can problem solve and think. And that's actually the last piece. Your prefrontal cortex is the last piece that, you know, is in full development. We develop that well into our 20s. And so we that is one of the last things that's developed. So the first thing that has developed is kind of our reptilian brain, which is right here in our brainstem. And so children that have gone through traumatic experiences over and over and do not have a safe adult that is helping them to work through those processes with them, often their survival part of their brain, that brainstem, develops more rapidly than their midbrain, which holds their emotions, and their prefrontal cortex, which holds their executive functioning. So you have children who have not had those pieces develop, but their survival part of their brain is larger, and so that's why you have children that are reacting all the time, because that part of their brain is more developed. Our bodies are different. If our brains are different, our bodies are automatically going to be different, because our brain is in charge of sending all those messages out through the body. So if your brain is functioning from a stress, from dealing with stress all the time, then it's going to send messages throughout that body that the body's in stress. So when we talk about fight, flight, or freeze, or becoming hypersensitive to things, all of those things are because our brains are different due to the trauma that we've experienced. Our biology changes too. There's a lot of talk and research that discusses epigenetics and how people who experience trauma might their DNA actually is changed, and it's possible that generations can be affected by that. So our biology has changed, and really one of the big pieces to me is our belief systems are changed. If you think about children who have experienced horrific things, they have a belief system about who they are. And yes, it's true that they've experienced those things, but they may believe things that aren't necessarily true. They may believe that they're unlovable. They may believe that there's no way that they can have success in their lives. And so that's why I have chosen this field, to help children. And honestly, I've come to believe, I've been doing this for more than 10 years now. I've come to believe that it's not just for children, it's for all of us. We all go through really tough things. And now, especially with TBRI starting to be immersed in the juvenile justice system and using the court system, we're seeing parents who were trauma kids and they never resolve those issues. And so they need this too. They need to change their belief system. They need to be freed from the things that may not be necessarily true in their life, that they can actually change. They can do better. And so obviously, if we have all of these changes, brain, body, biology, and beliefs, their behavior is going to be different. So those are the 5 B's of trauma and how trauma affects us, our lives. So one of the first things that you can consider that can affect us, because we all know about the horrific things that can happen, and you see that the bottom bullet points of this slide talks about abuse and neglect and trauma. Those are the easy things that you know about. But some things that we don't think about is if we have a traumatic pregnancy, if a mom is going through some really tough times, if she's having to live from couch to couch, maybe if she's using drugs and alcohol. Here's a good one. What about a mom that is successful and just got a promotion in her job, or maybe her husband got a promotion in his job, and they move, or they're building their dream home. Those are all wonderful things, and hey, they're excitedly waiting for their child to arrive. All of those things are good. However, building a house can be stressful, or starting a new job can be very stressful. So the mother is experiencing those stress hormones in her body, and that could affect development of the child in utero. So that could be some risk factors that could be considered traumatic for that child. Difficult birth. If a baby, when the mother is delivering the baby, if maybe they lose oxygen, or we have to do an emergency C-section for whatever reason, umbilical cord being wrapped around the neck, baby being the wrong way, all kinds of things. Those can be traumatic for the baby, and it can affect normal development. And then those babies that, for whatever reason, maybe it is a difficult birth, maybe they're born early, have to stay in the hospital for a little while. Maybe they have to be in an incubator. Maybe they have to be poked and they take blood, or maybe they have IVs those first few days of life, and they are limited in the contact that they have with their mom. They might not be able to nurse immediately, depending on their health status. So those are traumas as well. And so all of these things we should consider. And what happens is you have a child that is struggling, maybe exhibiting some challenging behaviors. And it's really easy for us to say, okay, this child is just being willful. They're choosing this behavior. Why? This doesn't make sense. But when you think about some of these things, you can say, oh my gosh, if you think back, wow, maybe there's something that that affected their development along the way that is not allowing them to regulate like they should on a normal development path, or trajectory. So these are really good things to consider when we're thinking about how trauma affects our kids. This is Dan Siegel's idea about the upstairs brain and downstairs brain. So when we're in our upstairs brain, we can think, we can make decisions, we can organize. We are accessing that executive functioning piece right here in front of our head, the prefrontal cortex. We can reason. We can think about, so if I put my hand on a hot stove, it might burn me if it's on. But if we don't have access to that, we are in our downstairs brain, and we're more likely to use stress reactions like fight, flight, or freeze. Dan Siegel has this wonderful model that he uses that you can teach anybody, but kids can teach, can understand this as well. So he puts his fist up like this, and you put your thumb underneath. And so this right here is your brain stem. So we were talking about that survival reptilian part of the brain. That's the brain stem. And then under here is the amygdala, the hippocampus, midbrain. This is where what we can often say to kids, this is where your big feelings are. And then this piece is your prefrontal cortex. So the way he describes it is, when we're feeling okay, when we're calm, when we're regulated, our prefrontal cortex kind of covers that he calls it the meat in the middle. And so it kind of covers that up. And so when we have feelings, it's controlled. It's okay. But when we start getting upset, stressed, when we're in a crisis, we tend to flip our lids, is what he says. And so that exposes all those big feelings. And so that's when you see anger, fear, behaviors that don't make a lot of sense based on their emotions. And when we're able to go in and help a child to regulate and help them to calm, then we bring this lid down, per se. We bring that down, and we're able to regulate again, and we're able to access the prefrontal cortex, where the decision-making, the organization, the attention, all of those things that are on the slide, we were able to access that at the time. So it's important for us as adults to remember that when we see a kiddo that is clearly flipped their lid, that they don't have access to those things. And so it's not a time to lecture. It's not a time to start asking them a bunch of questions about why they didn't do what we asked them to do. When they have flipped their lid, they are telling you, I need help with calming. I'm having, I love this. Here recently at some of the trainings, Darren Jones and Henry Milton, several of the Institute employees, they often say, they're not giving you a hard time, they're having a hard time. And so when you see that lid is flipped, when their big emotions are all over the place, think to yourself, it's my job to help this child or this person to regulate. They're having a hard time. So how can I do that? Is it me just sitting down next to them and listening? Is it offering them a glass of water? Do they have a sensory issue? Do I hand them a weighted blanket? Just all of those things that you can think of instead of you becoming dysregulated. And that's what we often do. And I will raise my hand. I say this all the time. I tell people, I mess this up all the time, and I teach this stuff. It's because we are triggered. We're human, and we kind of go back to what we know. And this really is counterintuitive. This way of thinking tends to be counterintuitive to what we have learned. We always say old school, the traditional style of parenting. And so I was raised under the traditional style of parenting. My parents spanked me. I did not feel abused at all, but that was the traditional way that we grew up. And we have learned that we can do so much better now. We can build relationships and not be as punitive, because when you're punitive, you continue the cycle of fear. So if you're able to be more proactive and build relationships, then the child will feel safer with you and should be able to develop and grow and learn new behaviors. I don't know if you're familiar with the ACEs study, but this study has become more and more popular. What's really amazing to me is this study began back in the early 80s. And here we are, 2019, and it's just now really becoming popular, which I think is very interesting. But Vincent Folletti was an internist who started doing some studies with clients that were struggling with obesity. And he found they had a program that they put him through, and several people were losing a lot of weight, doing really well, life-changing amounts of weight. And they started noticing that several of these people, after losing this amount of weight, jumped out of the program. And when they did, they, gained their weight back, some way much more, than than what they started off with. And so he was thinking, my goodness, what's going on? They should be happy. They've lost this weight. They look wonderful. What's going on? So when they dug deeper into the situations with their clients, they realized that a high percentage of the people that were a part of this study had endured child sexual abuse. And so what they found is eating was a way to regulate themselves. It was a way to help them feel calm, or a way to protect themselves. They found that, if I'm overweight, then maybe I'm not as noticeable. Maybe I'm not as sexually attracted to other people. Maybe I will not be perpetrated against. So that led to more and more studies. And so in the mid-90s, he started what is now the ACE study, and it has led to some really amazing data and information. They have a website. I've been thinking of this resource at the end of the slideshow, but it's if you want to look up the website, it is ACES Too High, TOO, not the number, so ACESTOOHIGH. I'm pretty sure it's .org. But they have lots of, I have a couple of slides here, and these are from the website. Lots of infographics. They have the actual ACEs questionnaire that you can use. It's only 10 questions, and so it just takes you a few minutes to answer. But basically what they did is they created a survey for these people that were a part of his research study. And they're yes or no questions. Things like, were you in a home that your parents were divorced? Or did you live in a home? And this was, I think you had to answer like 18 and below. So not like currently as an adult, but as a child, this is, did you experience this? So did you live in a home where one person was incarcerated? Or, it also asked, did you experience sexual abuse or physical abuse or those sorts of things? So 10 questions, and they were yes or no. So if you answer yes, you get 1 point. And after completing that survey, you count up the yeses, and that is your ACE score. So what he found is the higher your ACE score, the higher probability that you will have some sort of health risk. And so you can look at this slide and see that there's all kinds of health risks that he included, things like heart disease, cancer, stroke, depression, suicide attempts, drug use, all of those things. So I love this graphic because it shows you how the circles become larger the higher the score. And it's even connected to life expectancy. So in the end, they learned that the higher your ACEs, the lower, the age of your life expectancy can be. So to me, this study is telling us how important trauma is. And I'm sorry, I did not tell you what ACEs stands for. ACEs is adverse childhood experiences. So he is saying that those of us that have a high number of adverse childhood experiences risk, it's not a guarantee, we risk, number one, health and mental health issues and a possible shortened lifespan. So that's how imperative and how important it is that we look at trauma and how it's affecting us. And there is hope. We can work on this. We can process this with people that we trust, whether it's a therapist, whether it's a teacher, whether it's a parent or a friend or a significant other. We can work on these things and hopefully change the trajectory of what the study is saying. So let's get back to TBRI. I wanted to talk about trauma first so that you guys understand how important it is and the reason why TBRI was created. What is good about TBRI is it's holistic. It's not just therapy. It's not just a model or an exercise. It considers the whole child. Dr. Purvis would often say, when you're baking a cake, you from scratch, you have egg. You have to have eggs. You have to have some sort of oil. You have to have the flour. If you leave one of those things out and put it in the oven and bring it out, it's not going to taste right. You have to have all of the things that is necessary to bake a cake for it to be right. In the same sense, TBRI includes all of the things. It includes your medical doctor. It includes therapy, occupational therapy if that's needed. Many of our kids have sensory processing issues that an occupational therapist can very much help with that. But it also includes your family and how your family engages with each other. So it looks at the whole child and not just one piece of what the child needs. And it's very developmentally respectful. So it takes in consideration the line of development and where a child should be. Often we talk about when kids go through trauma, it can deprive them of developing up to half of their age. So we get so frustrated a lot of times when we're working with teens. We feel like you should just act your age. Why are you acting like a 3-year-old? Well, they might be 8 or 9. And if you cut that in half, that's close to 3, or if you have a 16-year-old and they're behaving very immaturely, well, what's half of that? 8. So we also have to kind of step back and go, oh my gosh, we are not engaging them at their developmental age. And sometimes we have to step back and give them what they needed at that age and bring them back up to their chronological age. So it's really important. Another thing that is attachment-based, we're going to talk about attachment here in a minute, and how that bonding, that relationship with safe adults, caregivers, is really important. Why do we use TBRI? Because it's effective. It's founded in research, and it helps us. Because I know we talk about children, but I still think when I went through practitioner training, I learned of all the things that I needed to work on as an adult. And we talk about being mindful, and we'll go over that as well here in a minute. But it helps us to go back to our natural developmental trajectory. Okay, so there's 3 principles to TBRI. There's the connecting principle, so that's the relationship piece. There's the empowering principles, which is how do you provide an environment for your child, and also how do you empower their brains and their bodies in a way that they can be successful. And then there's the correcting piece. What's the 1, 2, 3? What's the when we're having issues with behaviors? What is it that we do? What the bottom line? When this kid, I've tried everything, I don't know what else to try. What do I do then? Okay. And so what we talk about is how much time do we spend on these principles? We often ask when we're training a room of people. We will ask, and usually we'll just show one of these triangles first. We'll say, how much time do you think you spend on connecting? And how much time do you think you spend time on correcting? Almost always people will say they spend much more time on correcting, and they wish they didn't have to. And so then we will show the second pyramid that's on the right-hand side and say, if we work on our relationships, if we spend more time working on connection and on empowering, that hopefully we won't have to spend as much time on correcting. And so we essentially invert the triangle and set it upright to where the base is connecting, and then correcting is the very top, and we don't have to spend quite as much time on the correcting piece because you become proactive and you're teaching and you're able to give them a good firm foundation, because we're always going to have to correct. I mean, we're human and our kids are normal, and they were going to question, they're going to sometimes not do what we ask them to, no matter how wonderful they are. So there is always time for correcting, because we always have time to learn. But as far as correcting really challenging behaviors, we're hoping that through connecting and empowering, we will help them to regulate or come to you when they have a need. Because when our children know that they have a safe adult to go to, they will come Their voices, if they know that their voice will be heard, that they will use their words and they will come and ask for what they need. But if you have a child that no one ever came, that no one answered their call, whether it was a baby, in their crib that was hungry and didn't get fed when they were crying, or whether it was an older child that maybe they, had the freedom of going down the street and riding their bike, and some bully came along and punched them, and nobody was there to talk to them about that or to protect them. If they don't feel like they have a safe adult, then they're not going to have a voice, because they're going to have the belief system. Remember, we talked about those B's. They're going to have a belief system that I have to take care of myself. Nobody's going to do it but me. So I don't have a voice. There's no reason to say anything to anybody because it's me. So we have to teach them that that's not the truth. There are people out there that want to spend their lives making sure that they're safe and that they can be successful, and they can be successful parents one day if they want to be. All right, so the connecting principle has two pieces. There's the mindfulness strategies, and engagement strategies. Okay, the mindfulness strategies, this is the hardest part because this is pointing fingers at us as the adults. We have to be mindful of what we bring to the table, of our own histories. What have we experienced in our lives? Because what we've experienced, we will be triggered by. When I worked at the children's home and I was in the director of residential care, I was the person that would hire and fire, and foster parents would come in and we would be interviewing, and we would say, okay, this is going to be a tough job. These are children that have come from really tough backgrounds, and you may have some tough days. So have you worked through your own stuff? Because if you haven't, I promise you, it will come right here in front of you. A child, or many children, will in expressing their needs, if you haven't dealt with your own, your history is going to stare you right in the face. Okay, doesn't mean that you have to be all healed and perfect, but if you have acknowledged your past and are working on those to process through that history, then you're not as likely to become triggered and to burn out. Because what happens is, if you haven't done that, then you subconsciously will protect yourself. I mean, that's just the way we are. I learned that I was that way. I learned that I was a dismissive attachment style. And so I had to really work on that to become more secure. So being aware of your own history is very important. Also being aware of your child's emotional and physical needs, knowing what they bring, knowing that maybe they're shy, maybe they were never taught safe boundaries, and they're kind of indiscriminately friendly, and they need to learn about safe adults and not safe adults. Just knowing emotionally, where are they? We talked about earlier children being older but acting younger, knowing developmentally where they are. And then, this is kind of obvious, but being aware of the current situation and environment. So you have a child that has recently been contacted by their birth mom, and that's you've seen some behaviors because of that. Being aware of maybe some anniversaries. Sometimes we call them traumaversaries, things that happen, and sometimes we aren't always aware of those. Our bodies, like Van der Kolk says, keeps the score, and so sometimes we have to kind of investigate and go, oh my gosh, that's the day that they were taken from their family. And so this is why we're having a hard time today. So being aware of the situation and the environment they're in is also really important to being mindful, being aware and being mindful of the situation. So if we talk about attachment and self-regulation, and I'm telling you, there's a whole full day training that we can talk about attachment styles and child attachment versus adult attachment. And unfortunately, we don't have time to go through that today. But I wanted to talk about just in general attachment and how it connects with self-regulation. So in optimal normal development, a caregiver will act as a regulator, and it's like an external regulator. And I always kind of compare that. And there's going to come a day that when I talk about this, people won't even know what I'm talking about. But when we had the external modems to our computers, we had to wait for the dial-up and all that. That's kind of what I think about when I think about an external regulator. It's something outside of the unit, that is doing the work. So in the first few years of life, when a baby is born, our human and mammals cannot survive on their own. They are dependent on a caregiver of some sort. So they depend on us to eat, to have a safe environment, to be warm, change their diapers if they're an infant, those sorts of things. And if those things don't happen, they're at risk for not surviving. So it is really important that as an adult or a caregiver that we become our external regulator, that we, every time there's a cry, when they're infants, they do not have language yet. So they cry and we have to determine, is that a cry for a diaper change, or is there a cry because they just want us to hold them, or they're hungry, or they're scared, tummy ache, all those things. But as they get older and develop language, we become more of a co-regulator. So you may have a toddler that says, "Mommy, I want something to drink." And so then we go, "Okay, let's go get you some juice." "Oh, I want to pour it," and so you're thinking, "Oh my gosh, it's going to go all over the place." So, "Okay, let's do this together." So you go with them. You don't let a 3-year-old go and get a huge, thing of juice where it's going to, number one, hurt them and drop and, or go all over the place. So you go with them to the kitchen and you let them help. And so that's a fun thing. And we forget, we just kind of, life is just, it goes on. We're so busy. But it's good for us to say, "Hey, good job. Thanks for helping Mommy." And that way they feel good about themselves and they're able to regulate with you. And then hopefully as they get older, hopefully around school age, they're able to regulate on their own. And so what happens in our bodies, and I did not put the attachment cycle up in the slideshow just because, again, I can go on and on about that, and I was afraid that it would take too much time. But just in the gist, when we have a need and express a need, our bodies react to that. We have our nervous system reacts to if we're under stress or under crisis. And then also we have chemicals that go throughout our bodies, cortisol and epinephrine and all those things. And glutamate is another kind of a stress hormone. And so what happens is we express that need and all of those things happen throughout our body, because our body's basically preparing us to protect itself. But then when you have either an external regulator or a co-regulator, then that adult is providing safety and protection. And then when that child knows that that's happening, then their bodies go back to homeostasis, back to a normal. So then their nervous system says, "Okay, we're all right. We're going to turn the sirens off. We're okay." And then we will stop producing the stress hormones, and we will start producing hormones like GABA and dopamine and serotonin, the good, feel-good hormones that tells our body that we're okay now. There's somebody here to help, and somebody's going to meet our need. So if we're able to externally regulate as the baby, co-regulate as they get a little bit older, then hopefully we are able to do that cycle on our own. We don't have to depend on the caregiver. Now, we all know that even our adult children will come home to be regulated every once in a while. But for the most part, if they were given this type of regulation throughout their life, then they are able to, for the most part, regulate on their own and be successful. So I think this is really important. I'll just go over this quickly. In places of fear, the child's need is not and the child's need is not regulated by a safe adult. And the child doesn't learn to regulate on their own, like we were just talking about. then the child learns different strategies to get their needs met. And so you start seeing aggressive behavior, violence, and control, because they have a belief system that they have to take care of themselves, and their world becomes scary to them because they haven't had anybody to help them to regulate and help them to feel safe. So secure attachment, I'm just going to give you some indicators of secure attachment. Children that are securely attached are competent. They have a voice. They can ask for what they need. They're persistent. They don't quit. So when you see a lot of kids that kind of give up on tasks, they might be insecurely attached. Because if a child is able to fail and go back, John Bowlby talks about safe base. He was our guy that came up with the attachment styles. He talked about the safe base, secure base. So when we go out and explore our world, if we fail or if we get hurt, as long as we have some sort of secure base to go back to and get regulated, then we get back out there. We get back on the horse. We try again. But if you have a child that feels like they don't have anybody to help them and they have to protect themselves, they're more likely to quit. It's too harmful. It's too risky for them to go out and be a failure. So persistence is really important. They're free. A secure child is free to be creative and to trust adults. And they think about what other people are thinking. They value people rather than things. They're socially competent. They can be friends with people, or they can kind of be by themselves with people. That autonomy. And they have a little bit more satisfaction and success in life and marriage and jobs. So we're going to talk about engagement strategies because that is the easiest way to start using TBRI, to use certain strategies and how you engage and relate with children. And so you can consider some things. You can identify the child with the greatest need if you're able to engage. You're going to be able to identify the greatest need in that child if you're engaging with them in a way that is helpful. And you can select a particular engagement strategy to focus on and practice with that child. So I'm going to go ahead and move the slide so that we can talk about the engagement strategies. These are the different engagement strategies that Dr. Purvis talked about. I want to start off with playful engagement, actually, because we all forget about playful. And I will say I do. I'm not. My husband is so much more playful with my kids than I am. So I have to really be more playful. But if we can interact with a child through play, Dr. Purvis would say that play disarms fear. And I can say, I often do in-home interventions with families. I go in the home and I use these TBRI strategies with the families. And when the first day, that I meet with the child, they don't trust me. And that makes sense. They've never met me before. They don't know who I am. They don't know if I'm some other caseworker that's going to take them out of the house. They have no idea. So it's very important for me to come in softly and play games with them and talk to them, use really good eye contact. We'll jump to the eye contact. Very soft eyes. Eye contact can be very threatening to children. And also to behavior match. If a child is sitting down playing with their cars, then I'm going to connect with them and build relationship with them a lot quicker if I get down on the floor and play with their cars with them or play with something that is next to them. Even a lot of times people will say, man, I just don't know what to do with my teenager. She just clams up. They don't want to say anything. Well, you can behavior match that. You can just sit down very quietly next to them and just be there. A lot of times what I say is, I'm going to be right here next to you if you need me. I know that you're upset. I'll be right here. And I'm just quiet. And I think we always have to realize that a lot of times we use way too many words than what we should. And so just being there, just sending the message that I'm stopping what I'm doing, you're important enough that I'm going to be there. and match their behavior. Voice tone is really important. It's real easy for us to be sarcastic in our tone. And sometimes with teens, that's okay. Sometimes that can be kind of connecting because we all know that teens are very sarcastic. But we have to be careful. But basically having a nice calm tone and not yelling across the room. We're used to just, hey, I said to do that, you know. Instead of yelling at them across the room, going to them, having eye contact, being close in proximity, and slowing the cadence down, letting them know that I'm calm, but I'm still in charge. You are not giving off a sense that you're passive, okay? Because they need to understand that you're still a confident adult that's in charge, but you're able and flexible enough to calm down and maybe give some choices to work things out with them. And then touch, you know, we have to be really careful with touch because a lot of our kids have had very harmful touch in their lives. And so offering a hand on a shoulder, even like symbolic touch. I would watch Dr. Purvis a lot. This talks about, it also lists a chin prompt where you can actually touch the chin and just kind of move it up. But there were times when I could see her giving a symbolic chin prompt where she's really not touching, but she's got it underneath the chin, and the child even reacts as if she were kind of grazing the chin. So you can give symbolic touch to kind of send the message, I want to touch you, but I want to be respectful of your space. And if you know that there's a child that doesn't feel comfortable with touch, then you can be respectful of that. Okay, so the empowering principles is the physiological strategies, which is what can we do for the body, and ecological strategies, what can you do for the environment. This is where we talk about field safety. So we often are safe, but we may not feel safe. So I always give the example of if you're in a room and you start smelling fire, your brain may go immediately, oh my gosh, this building is on fire, I gotta get out. And you don't care what people are saying. If you're listening to a webinar, you don't care what I'm saying, you're gonna get off that computer and you're gonna get out of there because you want, your brain stem is telling you, I have to survive. And then you run out of the house, but then you realize, oh my goodness, somebody was cooking something and they were just burning. It was burning on the stove, you know, and it wasn't a life-altering situation. So then if you're able to regulate yourself, then your brain will say, okay, you're fine, just like we were saying with that attachment cycle. Everything's fine, so we can calm down now. Often our children, because they did not have that external regulator, they did not have a co-regulator, they walk around not feeling safe all the time. And so even though they're in loving homes, even though they're in a wonderful school with teachers that are just great and they meet their needs, our kids, until they become convinced that they're safe, are walking around very hypervigilant and feeling like they're in crisis all the time when they're really not. So helping you being mindful of that and knowing that, but also then you thinking of how can I continually remind them that they really are safe? What are the things that I can do to help them feel calm is going to help. So here's some examples of how you can empower children. It's really good to be able to hydrate and eat something every 2 hours. Our blood sugar levels need to be just leveled out, and if we wait way too long to have a snack or just anything in our bodies, then we're going to have spikes. And I mean, I don't know about you, but when I've gone a long time without having anything to eat, I get pretty grumpy. So our kiddos need to have every couple of hours something in their bodies. And that's a really easy way to, to help them to regulate. They really need to be getting up and around. It's great if they can have physical play every 2 hours, but I know a lot, if we're talking about schools, I know teachers that, we've really kind of taken away a lot of our recesses and our physical plays throughout the day. So a lot of teachers will get creative. They will have, when they're changing from one activity to another, like maybe a math lesson to maybe reading, then they will have their students get up after one lesson and put their folder up over here, and then go over here on the other side of the classroom and pick up something else and start that, just so they can get up and move around. A lot of teachers are using brain breaks. They'll use Brain Gym, Go Noodle, all kinds of things where they can just do actual sensory activities where they can move around. For children that have supersonic hearing and can hear every little thing, headphones are helpful. If you can have fidgets available, that's helpful. The thing that's really important about that, though, is that if a teacher, or it doesn't have to be a teacher, it could be any kind of a situation where you have children teaching or doing activities. If that fidget becomes a toy, then you are totally you're missing out on the whole reason you're using it. That fidget is supposed to help them calm, because some students have to have their hands on something to be able to pay attention or process or even feel calm. So so you have to do a lot of teaching up front and say, this fidget is to help you. It's not to throw around. It's not to be used to distract your classmates. It's not a toy. So when you ask for it, it's because you need it to help you focus or calm down, or to help you. If it becomes a toy, or if it becomes a distraction, then we'll need to put it back up to where it was. And so I think what has happened is you get all these fidget spinners, all these things, and all these kids come with them, and they need them. Yes, they need them. But there was no structure set around them, and teachers weren't able to have a handle on how to use them. So that's a thought. So just know that chewing is very calming for kids, and I know that we all hate gum. But if they can chew on something, you'll notice that some kids are chewing on their clothes, on their hair. So if you can offer something that's more healthy, and there's lots of OT, occupational sites, that you can find things that you can buy that they can chew on. Or if you're okay with them chewing gum, when you chew something, it's proprioceptive, sensory integration, and then it also releases a calming stress hormone, a calming hormone. Weighted items, bean bags, cushions, peace corners, all kinds of things are really good ideas to help empower children. Nurture groups is something else that's really fun. You can, it's really social emotional learning, really. So it's a time that you can gather everybody together, and you can spend anywhere from 15 minutes up to an hour if you have it. But it's a structured activity. You go over different rules. Set those rules. We need to stick together, and we need to treat each other nicely and not hurt each other. And more importantly, we want to have fun together. Usually have kind of an icebreaker. We do a Band-Aid activity, which teaches us how to be empathetic to each other and compassionate. We do an engine check. The alert program has this really neat thing where you can build an engine with a plate, and they compare your feelings with an engine to the car. And so if you're on red, you're revved up, and maybe you're really upset, or you're scared, or you're mad. If you're on blue, your engine's kind of putting along almost like it's out of gas, so you might be tired or sad. You might also be scared. Sometimes children, when they get scared, they go into the blue. And if you're on green, you're running along just fine. So this is a good communication tool and a way to help children learn about their bodies and how stress can affect their bodies. So we always do an engine check to know how our kids are doing during our nurture group. And there's also a feeding exercise, and then we always do like a closing, just kind of a closing. We can do a hand hug, we can do a chant, we can do high fives, that sort of thing, just so the children know that the activity is over. So there's a lot to say about nurture groups as well, but that's just the sense of it. This is a picture, different pictures of engine plates that I've had kids make. And the bottom one is, I was in Brazil doing a training with the Institute. And So these are adults that made engine plates at the bottom picture. Here's some other activities for the classroom. I don't think I'm going to go over them because I think we're almost out of time, but you will have this slideshow at the end. And then the correcting piece, we're not going to spend a whole lot of time on the correcting piece just because I really need to have probably an hour or more just to go over the details. But there's two pieces. Proactive, do a lot of teaching, teach them scripts. Gentle and kind is a script. With permission, with supervision and permission. So that's that co-regulation. You can go do this, but I want to do it with you to make sure that you're safe. Allowing for choices and compromises and sharing power. And I know a lot of people really struggle with that because some adults say, gosh, you're just letting them do whatever they want to. And that's really not the case. What's important about TBRI is to have a balance between structure and nurture. So you're still providing a structure. You will say, it's not okay for you to hit somebody. It's not okay for you to cuss me out. But I'm okay with you having words. So let's figure out a different way for you to express your need. And that's the nurture piece. So I'm here for you. I'm not going to just say, oh, just because you did this, then now you've lost all your privileges and now, you know, I'm mad at you and I want you to go away from me. No, you are important enough that this behavior is not okay, and I want you to learn how to be respectful. So I'm going to take the time to teach you, and we're going to try that again. We're going to work on this together until you get it, until you become successful. So the responsive strategies is the ideal response. It's important to deal with behaviors immediately. That's the I. Directly, you know, I talk about not yelling across the room, just close proximity, being right there on eye contact. Efficiently, and that's actually a part of the levels of response. So don't use more energy than you need to. Dr. Purvis would say, don't kill a mosquito with an elephant gun, okay? Don't go all out on just small little offenses. So make sure that you use the right amount of energy for the situation. The A stands for action-based. Offer a redo, offer a way for them to know what is the right way. Another activity that we do with kids is something called right way, wrong way, and we do role play. And so we'll pick out a situation, maybe it's bedtime, maybe it's hard for them to go to bed, they don't want to go to bed or take a bath. And so we'll let them do it the wrong way without getting in trouble. Show me the wrong way. And they love that, and we get to go, oh, that's a great job doing the wrong way. Now, what's the right way? And if they need it, we'll show them what the right way is. But usually kids know what the right way is. And we give them that opportunity. So it gives their bodies the opportunity to actually act that out so that they have that kinesthetic memory that they really can do it right. And changing that belief system. I can really do this right. I can be successful. The levels of response are just the different levels. Playful. Level 1 is playful. If you can react to a situation with playful engagement, you might completely save the day. It may literally, that situation may be over in 2 or 3 minutes. Now, I know that a lot of times playful engagement is not enough. So but if you can use it and get back on track, then great, wonderful. The second one is called structured response. So you give them choices. You say, okay, now it's not okay for you to take that toy away from your brother, but let me give you a couple choices here. We can have another toy, or you know what? If you'll let your brother play with that for about 5 more minutes, then he's gonna share with you, and you can do that. So which one do you want? You want another toy? You want to wait a few more minutes and get that toy? So giving those choices. Then the level 3 is calming. So when we talked about flipping the lid, so if you've tried playful and that's not working, and you offer choices and they can't handle that either, like, oh no, I don't care, I don't want those choices, then that's telling you that they don't have access to this prefrontal cortex and they need you to help them to regulate. So that is calming. So whatever it is that you have learned that is calming to them, okay? All right, so here's another really good resource really quickly before we get done. They have a problem-solving sheet that you can use. And so when you find yourself kind of stuck, or you're in a situation that you're really not sure what to do, or maybe this thing happened and you felt really bad about how it was handled, and so let's look at this and figure out how we can do this. You can look through here and what were the behaviors? What was the challenging behaviors? And what was the need beneath that behavior? What was the message? What does that child really need? And then you ask yourself, okay, so was I connected, or how can I be connected in this situation? How can I empower this child? And what can we do to teach proactively to help this child in the future? Catching it low real quickly is just really being mindful and watching that behavior and seeing it before it blows up into a situation. So you might see them clench their fists or their teeth, or you can tell that their eyes are dilated, or you can just tell. I mean, after a while, we know our children really well, and we know that I see that it's about to go. It's about to blow here in a minute. So if you can catch it low and start working on it, then maybe you will save an hour or two of meltdown. And then making a plan for that. So I think this is really helpful for people trying to make plans in how to use TBRI. Okay, and then here are the resources. I took some of the information from the child maltreatment data book. I also have the website for the Institute of Child Development. Then there are several YouTube videos that the Institute has posted on YouTube for free. And so this will get you to one of those videos, but then you'll have access to everything. And there's all kinds of things, lots of helpful stuff. Then I wanted you to know about the book that Dr. Purvitz and Dr. Cross wrote in 2007, The Connected Child. That's kind of what started all of this. Another amazing book, this is a new book that just came out in 2019 by Dr. Mona Delahook, Beyond Behaviors. It is phenomenal. It is wonderful, and it's written for all people. It's not too hard to get through. And then a couple of articles that I think would be helpful if you're thinking about schools. The importance of addressing complex trauma in schools. This is from the Institute. And then the last one is an article that myself and a research group that I'm involved in at A&M Commerce wrote about implementing TBRI in the schools. So, okay, I know I've gone 7 minutes over, so I need to give this over to Jeannie and Caitlin.
Terrific. Thank you so much, Angie. That was wonderful and really great information for us to all keep in mind as we're working with students. And one comment that I wanted to point out within the comments or in the chat box was just that it's important to be thoughtful before using the ACEs survey, because asking someone those types of questions can be a bit traumatizing at times, and having a plan for support is really
right. Making sure ahead of time that they have somebody to work out and process that information. Absolutely. Yes. Very good point.
Thanks for that reminder. And I just want to let you all know that the slides and the recording are going to be made available on our website. So that will make those available for you. I just want to remind you all that this webinar is eligible for continuing education. And members receive free continuing education, and you can complete the survey that is in the chat box. Caitlin so promptly put that in the chat box, so just click on there, complete that evaluation, and it'll ask you if you'd like to receive continuing education. Just another reminder about our conference. We hope to see you in Cincinnati. If you need to reach out to us, if you need resources, expert advice, if you want to talk about membership, please feel free to reach out to us. There's our website as well as our phone number, and you can always follow us on social media. So Angie, thank you again so much for your time and expertise today. We're thrilled to learn from you today, and I hope that you all have a wonderful day.
Thank you.
Bye.